So 10K work is a simple 2x2 matrix. On one axis, you have skill, low skill, high skill. And on one axis, you have leverage, low leverage, high leverage. And it bears clarifying that by leverage, I don't mean financial leverage. I don't mean borrowing money to amplify your returns. I mean just the leverage. The way I describe leverage is the thing keeps happening while I'm surfing. So it could be a really good system in automation, or it could be a team of contractors, or it could be being a board member versus a CEO, right? Working on the business versus working in the business. So $10 is low skill, low leverage, right? Checking email. It's a very classic $10 work. Formatting Excel or PowerPoint, lining. We all do it. It feels so good when you do it. Inbox zero, great example. $100 work is low, it's high leverage. So there's some scale in it, but you're not necessarily leveraging the right thing. And so in there, I put a lot of the productivity stuff. GTD is an example of $100 work where you could, and so at some point you can only automate yourself. You still need the why, or you still need the North Star. That's 10. 1,000 is really where most people stop, because 1,000 is low leverage, high skill. So you can think of the 10X engineer, right? The guy or gal that can do code at a pace and they get paid a higher wage because of that. You can think of the partner at the law firm, the rainmaker at Goldman Sachs. They have a unique skill that is usually from years and years of experience and being talented. And because of that, they get really high salaries, 6-7-figure salaries. There's no leverage, right? When the bankruptcy lawyer takes a year off to go to Bali, the income stops, because they are still trading time for money, either in a wage or through their business. So then you get to 10K, which is high leverage, high skill. Mm-hmm. So how can you leverage unique skills? And the most common example of true 10K work is like hiring, training, recruiting, retention, right? That is when you then transfer your knowledge to a team and you build scale. The great thing about 10K work is a little bit like the 4-hour work week.
Right. Welcome to this episode of The Change Alchemist. This is your host, Shobana Vishwanathan. And today's guest is Khemaridh Hy. Kay has been called Oprah for Millennials by CNN and the Wall Street Guru by Bloomberg. Kay worked on Wall Street for over 15 years and thought he'd fulfill dreams he'd held since childhood, income, status, a great career. But deep inside, he felt numb and was afraid he'd spend the rest of his life going through the motions. In this second chapter of his life, he's continuing to work with a talented group of builders and tinkerers while always leading with, "How can I be helpful?" I found Kay while I did a class on supercharging my productivity. And I found more than productivity with Kay. Kay is the founder of Rad Reads, a guide to the examined and intentional life. He's the founding editor at Quads at Work. And he's also a podcast host at Rad Awakenings, where he tells the stories of individuals who are stuck, undergoing transitions, or embarking on new adventures. Welcome to the show, Khemaridh Hy. Can I call you Kay?
Yeah, Kay.
It's so fun to have you, and I'm looking forward to this discussion.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It's a true honor.
Thank you. So you've been called Oprah for Millennials by CNN and the Wall Street Guru by Bloomberg. You're really humble, but tell us how you started and how these monikers came to be.
I can take no credit for those other than showing up, but maybe I could just start by saying that I've very much been the accidental entrepreneur. And the accidental, those monikers are accidental monikers. What I'm doing today is accidental teaching. I became an accidental blogger. And so as we go through this conversation, one thing that will become quite clear is that I've never really had a plan. The plan has really revealed itself to me. But let's just step back. that's my kind of post treadmill life. I was on the treadmill, the corporate treadmill, that is also related to the hedonic treadmill, where I'm from New York City. I went to Yale undergrad and got sucked into the world of Wall Street as a bright-eyed, bushy-tailed 21-year-old. I worked on Wall Street for 14 years, believing that status, prestige, and income and power — I don't like to use that word, but I think your listeners will know what I mean by that — would be the panacea to a happy and calm life. And I was very fortunate to have a good amount of success on Wall Street, promotions, and bought my first apartment in my late 20s and all that fun stuff. But there was always something missing, right? There was always okay, that's cool, what's next? That's cool, what's next? That's cool, what's next? And at some point, I realized that maybe that's actually not the playbook. And us left brain engineering mindsets is just like, there's a plan, let's lay out the plan and let's execute on the plan. And once the plan is done, you reach this bliss or abiding. My spiritual teacher calls it abiding and enduring calm and happiness. Right? That's something we all strive for, right? Enduring calm and happiness. Yet most of us have not found that, despite many of us being quite successful professionally. So that was my first career. I pulled the ripcord. I call it an angel investment in myself. I took 2 years of cash, put it in a separate bank account with my wife's permission, and said, we can make that money go to zero. And I'm going to figure out what I'd like to do next. And like an angel investment, it probably had a 99% chance of going to zero and a 1% chance of having spectacular returns. And thankfully, the way the cards fell were in that spectacular returns, not in a financial sense of the word, but spectacular returns in the sense of I'm much closer to enduring calm and happiness than I was when I was 35 on that hedonic treadmill.
That's great insight. And you're not that old, but you still took the chance to reinvent yourself. Now, what do you do with your time these days?
That's a great question. I would answer it by saying I spend a lot of time surfing. Part of that, in traditional entrepreneur language, you could say that I traded that career for a lifestyle career, or where I prioritize lifestyle, which sounds so bizarre, right? It's like, oh, I prioritized the things that made me happy. And that was healthy body through physical activity, healthy mind through a series of spiritual practices like meditation and journaling. And I have a 7-year-old and a 4-year-old, and being a present father, involved father for them. So I inverted the script. Said I'm going to start with those 3 things, and then I'll build a career around that. And so a lot of my time is spent on those things. And then when we get into the more traditional sense of career or professional activity, I spend a lot of time writing. I love writing. I spend a lot of time talking to people like this, so people, like-minded folks. And so my business, so to speak, Rad Reads, has evolved from a blog and a newsletter, right? If you want to talk about products, it was a blog and a newsletter. Most people who are familiar with the internet will know that a blog and a newsletter are not they're not easy to monetize. You can't particularly get rich, or even make a sustenance income off of those things. And so from that, it's been 6 years since I stepped off the treadmill, and I've really explored a lot of different things. Most of my income would probably come from executive and life coaching. I've dabbled with sponsorship, very difficult model, didn't make much money doing that. I did a little bit of public speaking. I did some consulting. And about 18 months ago,